overnight trip. The kind half the passengers sleep and the other half stare out the window for hours. I almost didn't go. The weather was terrible. Heavy rain, low visibility. But my ticket was already paid for, so I got on anyway. There were only about 15 people on the bus when we left. Most of them looked exhausted, and nobody was talking. The driver barely even greeted people. The whole atmosphere felt strangely quiet from the start. About an hour into the trip, I noticed something odd. Every passenger had picked a seat except one, near the back of the bus. A window seat, completely empty. Nothing strange about that by itself. But every time someone got on a stop and looked around for a place to sit, they would glance at that seat, and then they'd choose a different one. Every single time. At first I thought maybe the seat was broken, or wet, or smelled bad. But later when I walked past it to use the restroom, I checked. It looked completely normal, perfectly clean, nothing wrong about it. Still empty. Around midnight the rain got much worse. The windows became black mirrors. You couldn't see anything outside anymore. Just reflections of passengers, and most of the people were asleep. Including me eventually. Or at least I thought I was asleep. I woke up sometime later. No idea what time. The bus felt different. Quieter. The overhead lights were off. Only dim floor lights remained. Everybody else seemed asleep. Except one person. Someone was sitting in the empty seat. I don't know why that bothered me so much. People get on buses, seats get filled. It's a normal thing. But something immediately felt wrong. Maybe because I hadn't seen anybody aboard. Maybe because I couldn't remember the bus stopping. Maybe because I was still half asleep. Whatever it was, I couldn't stop looking at them. The person sat perfectly still, facing forward, wearing dark clothing. I couldn't make out their face, only their outline. Every now and then lightning flashed outside, and for a split second, I'd see them sitting there, motionless. I eventually convinced myself I was overreacting. Then the bus stopped. Not at a station, it just stopped, in the middle of nowhere. The driver stood up. He walked down the aisle and stood beside the person. For several seconds, neither moved. Then the driver quietly said, "You weren't supposed to be here." The passenger slowly stood and walked towards the front of the bus. Nobody else reacted. Nobody woke up. Nobody moved. The passenger stepped off the bus into the darkness. The driver closed the door and he returned to his seat and started driving again. That should have been the end of it. But about 20 minutes later, I realized something. The seat was still occupied. My stomach dropped instantly because I just watched someone leave. I know I had. But there was still someone sitting there. Same seat, same posture, same dark silhouette. I looked around the bus and nobody else seemed to notice. Everybody remained asleep. Even worse, I couldn't remember whether the person currently sitting there was the same person I'd seen before. Then lightning flashed, and for the first time, I saw the seat clearly. It was empty, completely empty. No person, nothing. I immediately looked away. Then I looked back. Someone was there again. I stared at the seat. Blink, empty. Blink, occupied. Blink, empty. Blink, occupied. I stopped looking. I didn't know what else to do. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might throw up. Eventually I noticed another problem. The passengers around me, something was wrong with them. Not physically, their positions. Every time I glanced away and looked back, they had shifted slightly. Tiny movements, different arm positions, different head angles, different expressions. like photographs changing between frames. Then I noticed the woman across the aisle. She wasn't asleep. She was staring directly at me. I almost jumped. She leaned closer and whispered, "Don't look at the back." Then she closed her eyes and pretended to sleep. I turned around anyway. The empty seat was gone. It was just gone. The entire row where it should have been no longer existed. Just darkness, as if the back section of the bus had been erased. I stood up immediately. The driver noticed through his mirror. His face went pale. Then he yelled, "Sit down!" Everybody on the bus woke up at once. Every single person at the exact same moment, and they all turned towards me. Not angry, not confused, just watching. Dozens of eyes, silent, unblinking. Then every passenger slowly pointed toward the rear of the bus. I looked. I shouldn't have, but I did. The back of the bus wasn't a bus anymore. There were no seats, no walls, no windows. Just a long, dark hallway stretching into impossible distance. And standing very far away was a crowd of people, hundreds of them, perfectly still, watching. Then one of them started running. The driver slammed on the brakes. Everything went black. When I opened my eyes, sunlight was coming through the windows. The bus was parked at a station. Normal passengers, normal driver, normal seats. I immediately asked what happened. Nobody knew what I was talking about. They said we'd arrived 30 minutes ago. I'd apparently been asleep the entire trip. For a while, I was convinced myself it had been a nightmare. Sleep paralysis, stress, anything. Then a month later, I received a phone call. An unknown number. A man asked, "Did you take the Carolina route on October 17th? I said yes. There was a long silence. Then he asked, "Did you see the hallway?" My blood went cold. I asked who he was. He ignored the question. Instead, he said, "There were 23 of us." Another pause. "You're the only one who woke up." The call disconnected. I changed my number after that. Never heard from him again until last year. I was cleaning out an old closet and found my bus ticket from that trip. At least, I thought it was my bus ticket, because the date was wrong, the destination was wrong, and printed across the bottom in faded letters were the words I'd never seen before. No return trips available. The ticket wasn't issued by any bus company I'd ever heard of, and according to the serial number, it had been printed in 1986, nearly 40 years before I took the trip. I still have it, locked in a drawer. I don't touch it anymore, because every few months the destination changes, and each time it changes, it gets one stop closer to my hometown.